Herman's been gone for nigh on a year. He was due home yesterday, but he ain't here. It's a quick one while he's away. That's a Who track, just in case you didn't know. It was their mini rock opera. And we're doing a quick one while he's away. No, we're just doing a quick one before the fights on Saturday. Justin Gaethje versus Donald Cerrone. Jimmy Cruz there. I'm sure there's some other stuff. We'll look at it in a minute. Just a quick one. Let's have a look at some news. So, we didn't touch on this at all last time, but I should have, so I will today. Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal announced for UFC 244 in Madison Square Garden. That is interesting, at least, and I believe that's the main event, so no title necessary. However, they have made a fake-ass bitch belt called the BMF belt, standing for bad motherfucker. I thought this was a joke. Apparently they're actually doing it, and The Rock has offered to put it on the winner. Kind of like the money belt. Almost as lame. No, lamer, probably. But, I'm probably just against it because there's a possibility of getting a belt on Nate Diaz when he's never really done enough to win a belt. But yeah, that fight, makes sense. It's good fun. Actually, it doesn't really make sense unless you consider Nate Diaz's performance over Anthony Pettis to be the stuff of a top 5 welterweight, which, because of the way these guys do the rankings, it is. Side note, someone on Reddit put up a thing about they just looked into the 14 guys doing the rankings. Like, half of them don't work at MMA anymore. 2 of them are from MMA, MMA Weekly. So they have 25% of the rankings controlled, MMA Weekly. Just really funny to look down this list. Someone linked it to me and I retweeted it saying, top men. Someone sent me a thing saying the media isn't sending their best. They're bringing people that have a lot of problems. They're bringing bad rankings. They're bringing shitty hot takes. And some, I assume, are good people. Which I thought was the best way of summing up just the state of the rankings. If 14 people can fuck over Paul Felder in what should have been like the big shot of his career, I don't think that's right. So, and I'll keep saying it again. What the fuck is the MMA Journalists Union doing? I'm not a member, so I don't know. But, they should be putting out rankings every month, or they should at least have some nerd putting out rankings and signing off on it. Anyway, returning to Nate Diaz versus Masvidal. Good fight, I think. Masvidal, obviously competent or capable of kicking the legs of Nate Diaz. I was watching Masvidal versus KJ Noons the other day, and that was I've forgotten that fight even happened, but that was probably the best, or the smartest I've seen Masvidal fight. He's a clever fighter, and he just had KJ ducking onto knees, and then when KJ was trying to stand up and not get kneed in the head, he was jabbing him, so KJ would go back to trying to slip the jabs and then get kneed in the head again. Some of the most grotesque swelling and cutting on KJ Noons' face you'll ever see in MMA. If you've not seen that one, it's a hidden gem from the Strikeforce days, I believe. But I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunities to talk about that fight. There's been some really good fights announced for that card. What do we got? Kelvin Gastelum versus Darren Till. A lot of people were complaining about Darren Till not deserving this, being like, shot at the top middleweight, and you're just like, well, did Nate Diaz deserve his shot at number 5 ranked Anthony Pettis? Did Anthony Pettis deserve his shot at number 5 ranked Stephen Wonderboy Thompson? No, this is the world we live in, and, these are the dreams we're given. No, how's that Phil Collins song go? Yeah, but anyway, if Darren Till knocks out Kelvin Gastelum, then fine. Whatever, move him up the rankings. Maybe not into Kelvin Gastelum's spot, which is what they're doing in the actual rankings, but, he'll have proved that he is decent enough at that weight. But I like it. I like Darren Till at middleweight. The thing that they always said was that they weren't, or his coach always said, was that he was concerned about letting him move up to middleweight because he would then just see that as an allowance. So he would just, rather than stay in shape and be at middleweight, he'd go, oh, cool, I can eat more. And then, get too big and then have a huge cut down to middleweight again. Well, obviously Kelvin Gastelum is on the other end of the spectrum. He's like Robert Whittaker, basically a welterweight who's fighting a middleweight and excelling there because he doesn't have to cut weight, or at least much weight, and can put an amazing pace on these guys. Now, actually, I was thinking about this. Kelvin Gastelum, someone like him, someone with a Gastelum-esque style, if you could get that in the ring with Khabib, that'd be a fun fight. Someone who, when they're taken down, doesn't go to the fence, but turns to their hands and knees, crawls away from the fence, and then hits a weird arm roll while trying to stand up. Gastelum versus Romero, that'd be an exciting one. Man, Gastelum versus anyone. It's been too long since I've seen Gastelum, is what I'm saying. I want to see Gastelum against dudes who want to hold him down, because those are his funnest fights. What else you got on that card? Oh, they announced this week Stephen Thompson versus Vicente Luque, which we really like. We really like that a lot, actually. Vicente Luque, obviously, big counterpuncher, but goes forward to make the counterpunches happen. Stephen Thompson, more a fanny around on the outside sort of counter-striker. And Stephen Thompson has me in that weird place where, I'm shitting all over Valentina Shevchenko and others when people are like, takes two to tango, and they just can't, they're that kind of counterpuncher, they can't come forward, and I'm like, that's a limited counterpuncher is what you mean, somebody can't do the other bits. But I also defend Stephen Thompson at every opportunity. So this one, I'm hoping it's more fun. Perry versus Luque was fun, but Vicente didn't look like his usual self. He had a lot of respect for Perry's power, and I'm wondering how he'll be affected by Thompson in this one. Obviously, a lot of Luque's thing is like catch and pitch, or just, countering as the opponent throws, or after they throw, and the thing that Thompson has been pretty good at is not being there after his punches. That's why he does the dart, that's why he 1-2 duck out the side door, or 1-2 nice side kick or whatever. He's very good at not hanging about. Because Jorge Masvidal's a good counterpuncher and was just waiting on him and couldn't catch him. You got Johnny Walker booked on that card, returning to action against Corey Anderson. That's good. Corey Anderson is like a guy who's working his way towards contention every time. Well, no, if you do watch his fights, you go, that Corey Anderson, he's pretty good. But he'll end up losing at weird times. I think he lost to Shogun, didn't he? Or maybe he beat Shogun by decision. Can't remember. But, he'll have weird fights where you're like, he should win this, but he doesn't. But every time you watch him, you go, oh yeah, he should be in contention soon. So he could be a spoiler for Johnny Walker, because if you can drag it into like the second round and do some wrestling. I've not seen much of Johnny Walker in the later rounds, and when I have seen him in the later rounds on like the regional scene, it's not been great. Then you got Derek Lewis versus Blagoy Ivanov on that card too. Big wet fart of a fight. Hakeem Dawodo versus Julio Arce. Love it. And then Andrei Arlovsky versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik has just been announced. Rozenstruik, big hitter. Arlovsky, shaky chin. So that's your UFC 244 card. A lot of that was announced this week. That's fantastic. What else is going on? Neil Magny had his suspension lifted after 4 months because they basically agreed that it was a bullshit suspension. He was another one caught for like a weird... there's a name for it. Not like a performance-enhancing drug, but a banned substance in his blood. And basically they've gone like, okay, well, that's fine. You just take the 4 months that we held you on suspension, and we'll call it even. And then Ryzen announced its lightweight Grand Prix. Looking down this, I'm going, it's not great. However, it does, stick with the tradition of Pride Grand Prix, Dream Grand Prix. I love me a lightweight Grand Prix, because, and it's always in Japan, because where else is that going to happen? But a lightweight Grand Prix is the deepest division in MMA, and if you can do multiple fights on one night, you got me hooked. So you got Patricky Frere, the less good Frere, Johnny Case. Tatsuya Kawajiri is just there as a corpse to be, to boost someone else. Roberto Souza, or Satoshi, who is really coming along fast and looks a lot bigger without a gi on than I thought he was. You got Kamasako Hirohita, you got Luis Gustavo, Damian Brown, Tafik Musayev. Not amazing names. Satoshi I've definitely got my eye on. Patricky should probably be the favourite to win that, but a good fun Grand Prix is never a bad thing in my eyes. Then what else is going on? Then you got a couple more UFC announcements. Here's a fun one. Rashad Coulter has quote-unquote retired because no one wants to fight him. Rashad Coulter, you'll remember him being a heavyweight. He's 1-3. He's mainly famous for, in the UFC, he's mainly famous for his corner man being like he's a big old Mexican with a big old head. I need you to stop trying to hit him with the head and hit him in the body or whatever it was. He's a fun enough fighter. And, anytime someone says, no one wants to fight me, you're always like, bullshit. But... I can imagine a lot of people looking at him and going, yeah, well, he's a bit difficult for who he is, and look at his record. I'm not going to get anything out of winning that fight. So I could, believe that, but it sounds more like he's just frustrated at being a fringe heavyweight in the UFC. You're always going to be offered some fights and make a little bit of money, but it's a frustrating life, especially if you're not winning the fights. And then the weird out of nowhere, what the fuck is this announcement of the week? after teasing Jan Blachowicz, who I called Bland Jackowicz the other week, without even realising, after teasing Jan Blachowicz versus John Jones, I think it was Dana said that Blachowicz is the next obvious contender. He's now said that Jacare and Blachowicz, or Blachare and Jacare, he's like a black Ronaldo Jacare Souza. Blachare versus Jackowicz is happening at 205, so £205 in November on a Brazil card. So you're headlining the card with Blachowicz against middleweight coming up. Middleweight's the hometown guy, probably going to lose because he's also getting old. Weird decision there. Weird decision by Jacare to go up. Just weird all round. These middleweights looking at that title picture going, okay, Robert Whittaker is literally the best fighter who's ever lived. I give up. I'll go up and take the easier fight against John Jones. Right, let's have a quick rundown of this card this weekend. And fuck me, there's already been a cancellation. Also, generic fucking poster, lads. How's that? What on earth is that? It's the fucking teal and orange, and they got Cowboy's head in the teal part, with cow and then boy miles on the other side of his head, so that you can see it all. And then you got versus in like a scribbly Street Fighter font, and then Gaethje in an orange with glow, and then Gaethje standing there doing like the fist into palm, I'm gonna beat you up pose. It is a shitty poster. Especially when you compare it to Ryzen's most recent one, where they had some guy crawling up a wall. Even that, artistic posters. Weird story, was in Seville a little while ago, which I absolutely love, by the way. One of the most beautiful cities I've ever been to. Went to like the historic bull ring, or I thought it was a historic bull ring. It's an active bull ring, but it wasn't bullfight season. I just went to check out the building, but they had the posters up from the each season, and they're basically like pride posters. You know, it's never like here's a guy stabbing a bull or a bull goring a man. It's always something fucking artsy. You're going, wow, that's a pretty cool poster. It's like those European posters you see from movies in like the 70s and 80s, the painted ones that are just so much cooler than the actual posters. But anyway, poster game bullshit. Let's move on to the actual card. What's going on? I just seen Chaz Skelly. I'll always watch Chaz Skelly. Oh, he's fighting Jordan Griffin. Cool. Okay. Yeah, not a bad fight. My boy Lewis Smolka is fighting Ryan McDonald. Ryan McDonald ranked weirdly here because he's 10-1, but he's like the number 145th bantamweight worldwide on Tapology, which suggests to me that he's just come in off the regional rankings. But then they got Smolka at number 55 worldwide, and Smolka's good. What's he been up to? He had that sort of, he had an impressive UFC run to begin with, lost his debut, it wasn't his debut, lost that fight to Carriasso in his second fight in the UFC. Then he won a 4-fight win streak, and that was awesome. I think that was all at flyweight, wasn't it? But then he lost to Brandon Moreno, Ray Borg, Tim Elliott, Matthias Nicolau, just like fell off a cliff, suddenly goes away, comes back having like 3 good wins on the regional circuit, fights Sue Mudarji at UFC Fight Night 141, wins that by armbar, slick finish. Smolka on the ground, like him versus Tim Elliott. Him versus Tim Elliott was good, actually. But him versus Paddy Houlihan on that Ireland card, where I think that got bumped into main event spot, wasn't it? Because it was really, like, everyone was just dropping off that card like flies. And that was one of my favourite MMA grappling matches of all time. And nobody remembers it or talks about it. But that was bloody good fun. But he just came in against Matt Schnell, and that was... Matt Schnell just went crazy on him, and he lost by his triangle choke, but I seem to remember him getting hurt in the course of that one. Maybe I'm misremembering, but yeah, always like some Smolka. I think he also won like the first side kick to the head in the UFC, didn't he? First side kick to the head knockout. That was Richie Vakulik. He did with that. So always worth watching is what I'm saying. And Ryan McDonald just came into the UFC, lost his first fight in the UFC against Chris Gutierrez by decision. It'll be a fun one, is what I'm saying. Because honestly, aside from even the Ray Borg stuff was happening. Lewis Smolka doesn't have boring fights. He's the kind of guy like there was someone else I was moaning about the other day, but just the kind of guy you should keep around forever if you're the UFC. You know, if they're willing to fight for you, just keep paying them because they're good for fans to watch. Brad Katona, who looks, I always say this, but he looks like fucking Jake Mace. If you've ever seen Jake Mace, the Kung Fu guy on YouTube, always puts out videos that are like, real Kung Fu for street fight technique, and it's like, and then I give him a ridge hand to the pussy. It's normally like ridge hand to the rib, and that'll break all his ribs naturally, and they'll just fall down inside his chest cavity and puncture his intestines. It's always bollocks like that. And Brad Katona fucking looks like him, but mean. Look him up now. I'll give you a minute to do that. But Brad Katona came in off the Ultimate Fighter, whatever season that fucking was. Fought a couple of times in the UFC. Most recently fought Merab Valishvili, who I remember not being able to say his name, but I remember that fight being, decent. He's fighting Hunter Azure with the porniest name on the card. Also regionally ranked, so I'm guessing I haven't seen any of this guy. Let me just check his record. Oh, he was on the Contender Series against Chris Ocon. Do not remember that. How do you win a decision on the Contender Series and then not letting in like guys who knock dudes out, spark with wheel kicks and shit like that? Just nuts. But he's from the MMA lab, so good team. Marvin Vettori versus Andrew. Andrew, have you seen the Baccarat pieces? Andrew Sanchez fucking know nothing about that fight, and also I think who was it? Someone was just saying it's cancelled. Yeah, Aaron Bronsteter is reporting it as off. I've always got sort of mixed feelings about Marvin Vettori anyway, because firstly, roids, and secondly, came to that Israel Adesanya fight and was boring as fuck. I think he's had one since then, and I seem to remember it being actually pretty decent. Who was that against? Oh yeah, he fought Mutante, Cesar Ferreira, and that was actually an alright match. Cole Smith versus Miles Johns. Augusto Sakai versus Marcin Tybura. Couple of big fat heavyweights for you there. Marcin Tybura is still at like number 16 on the world heavyweight rankings according to Tapology. Bugger my ass, what a bad division. Okay, going into more interesting stuff. You've got Jimmy Crute, who is my boy, versus Misha Cirkunov. Cirkunov looks like your stereotype of an MMA fighter. He looks like the MMA fighter you would draw in a logo for your shitty MMA site in the early 2000s. Like Lockflow or something like that. But he is not on a great run at the moment. He got smoked by Volkan Ozdemir in 28 seconds. You'll remember that was the one where Ozdemir just spazzed out. And that was when Cirkunov was in a really good place, because Cirkunov had just come off beating Nicky Krills. Nicky Krills versus Cirkunov was so big for the dudes who were excited about the future of light heavyweight. Back in 2016, what an innocent time. We were like, yeah, God, it's sad that one has to lose, because both these guys could be contenders for John Jones' title in a couple of years' time. Anyway, so he beats Nicky Krills in a guillotine choke, maybe the best performance of his career, having just beaten Ion Cutelaba. Comes into the fight with Volkan Ozdemir, gets binked in 28 seconds, fights Glover Teixeira, loses in the first round, fights Patrick Cummings. Patrick Cummings mercifully lost, because Patrick Cummings has never won a fight. At least if you watch the UFC, that's the impression you would get. He fights all the time, and he never wins. And he had that early 1900s, late 1800s strongman moustache for that fight, and that was the one where he got clipped and did a stumble, and someone dubbed the that like Hanna-Barbera stumbling sound, it was a good fight, at least for that. And then he fought Johnny Walker and also got smoked in the first 30-40 seconds again, because Johnny Walker did his weird magic, but also because Misha Cirkunov looking a bit chinny, to be honest. So hasn't fought since March. Coming in against Jimmy Crute, who I feel like hasn't fought in quite a while. Yeah, no, February he's not fought since. But Jimmy Crute came into the UFC off the Contender Series, fought Paul Craig, fought an absolute blinder. That was one of my favourite light heavyweight fights in quite a while, because basically he was engaging Paul Craig in the grappling. Paul Craig ended up losing the grappling. Jimmy Crute kept using the Kimura to pass the guard and also to sweep when he was on the bottom. Love a man with a good Kimura, me. And then finally I actually finished him with a Kimura, which is quite rare in MMA. You don't see an awful lot of Kimura finishes. Mainly it is used as a deterrent to high crotches and just a counter to passes and things like that. Or to pass the guard. It's a threat more than it is an actual finish. And then he fought Sam Alvey, knocked him out, which we all like, because Sam Alvey is the enemy of international communism. He's stopping fighters unionising because he doesn't want them all to be paid the same. And then got up and had a sulk because he's Sam Alvey. But, there's still time to get on track and be in the next McGregor. I'm sorry, I take the piss out of Sam Alvey so much, but that interview was just so unbelievably dense. I'm sure he's a cool guy, once you sit down with him and explain what a union actually does. Anyway, Jimmy Crute versus Misha Cirkunov. I like this. I hope for some good grappling, actually. I've seen Crute on the feet. He looks decent. Cirkunov is serviceable on the feet, but Crute, I'd say that Crute's less... of his game, I would probably want to... If I wanted him to stick to his strength, I want him on the feet, but personally, I want to see this fight on the ground, because I enjoy Jimmy Crute's ground game. I think he's a brown belt or something like that, but the Kimura stuff is slick, and Cirkunov got a mean guillotine, and just a good top player, too. Won't go too much into that fight, because honestly, you don't care. Here's a good one. Shoeface versus Uriah Hall. Low down the card, but still a fun one. Uriah Hall, he's in an odd spot, because... I feel like he was better than ever against Paulo Costa, and then looked rubbish against Bevon Lewis, which was really weird, I just felt like he made a meal of that Bevon Lewis fight. If he'd fought... Well, maybe I'm underestimating Bevon Lewis, but if he'd fought the way that he fought against Paulo Costa against Bevon Lewis, I thought he should have done him much quicker. But, Uriah Hall's thing has always been that he's hit and miss, because a big, slick wheel kick or whatever... firstly, it's only going to land like 1 in every 8 times you do it, even if you're very good at timing it. And, if you're not getting ahead on the scorecards and doing the right things before that, you're hurting yourself. And then if you do weird shit and you get caught, Robert Whittaker's performance against Uriah Hall was basically just accepting Uriah Hall's mistakes. Like, Uriah Hall would do a spin kick, Robert Whittaker would press in and chest his back, and then it was back body lock for half a round. Robert Whittaker was like, thanks, I'll take the 10-9, if I must. There was no point where he was looking mad outclassed by Robert Whittaker. Went even with the guy who is now the best middleweight of all time, and probably pound for pound best fighter in MMA, if you ask me. But, it went even with the current middleweight champion, and just fucked it up on his decision making. The Derek Brunson one was definitely interesting, because that was just a habit that had already been exposed in him. Chris Weidman did him in exactly the same way back in 2011, was that? When was that? 2010. Almost. Late 2010. Almost spot on. Just corner him against the fence, wait for him to circle out. He circles out with a chin up, so you just smash him in the chin. And also, Kelvin Gastelum did that to him in the final of The Ultimate Fighter. Which was a split decision, but, I thought that Kelvin Gastelum probably clearly deserved that. But that was when everyone was so hot on Uriah Hall. They were like, he is the next whoever was popular at the time. But, he's the thing that he has not really got is that constant weapon. And I think that jab that he was showing against Costa could be that weapon. It's just that he didn't really build off it, and he just sort of let Costa make an ugly fight out of it. Costa eventually went 2 hands on, just covered both his hands and started trying to walk him down that way, and tired him out and, smashed his body by cornering him. And I think with a little bit more ring craft, using that jab, really feint, jab, feint, and then throwing double jabs and right hands and things and building off it, then Uriah Hall becomes very scary. With the odd, weird spinning back kick counter and shit like that thrown in. I think his problem has always been, it's always just the jab, and then there's a weird spin kick counter. It's never that middle bit where he's making you worry about stuff that he can do on offense that's not just the jab, or just a big spinning shit thing. And he's got a tough fight in this one too, because his strength has never been defensive grappling. And he's going to be... Well, he did do that sick Kimura on Gegard Mousasi. At least that's how I'm remembering it. It could have been Mousasi who's used the sweep to... the Kimura to sweep him. But I'm not going to accept that because it's Mousasi. But yeah, Shoeface is obviously a world champion grappler. Even though he just came off that fight with Heinich, whose style is, nah, doesn't work on me, mate. My favourite tweet of this week was someone being like, leg locks don't work on me. Leandro Lowe, it was fake, obviously, but Leandro Lowe replying, Craig Jones severed my MCL. It's not worth it, mate. And then the guy being like, ripped your MCL, but I'm different. It was Dan Crenshaw, the original one of those, wasn't it? But regardless, Shoeface, really, really basic on the feet, closes normally on the fence, takedown or shuck to back. Really basic stuff. Just done well because he's a world champion in jiu-jitsu. I just don't know if Uriah Hall's got it in him to do the counter-grappler performance, which is, that's what's carried Robert Whittaker to the top. This division, for whatever reason, has a lot of very strong grapplers in, and if you are a good anti-grappler, you can get far. Uriah Hall's thing is that he's tough for good strikers, and people who don't have very strong, or don't have strong enough takedowns and are a little bit intimidated by his spinning shit and the threat of his spinning shit. I would say that looks like could be, that'd be a big win for Hall if he beats Shoeface, in my opinion, just looking at the matchup. I don't know how Shoeface is ranked at the moment, but I think that would be, he's actually ranked below him, but I think that would be a big performance career-wise for Hall, because it would tell you that he's doing something that he hasn't been able to do up to that point. That rematch against Mousasi, where Mousasi was just like, no, I'm going to go ground this time. I want ground this time, and then Hall was like, no! Michel Pereira's back. Yeah, there we go. On the subject of spazzy shit. He's fighting Tristan Connelly. And yeah, Tristan Connelly just looks like a regular fat lad. 13-6 from Canada. Is this a last-minute replacement? Yes, it is. There we go. Called it. Sergey Kandotsko. Dotes? Oh, he can go. Can Dotes go? Yeah, Kandotsko pulled out. When is this? Like a week ago? Man, this is recent that they switched his opponent. All you really need to know about Michel Pereira is that he fights like an absolute nutter, and it's well worth watching him. Fought Danny Roberts in his last one. That was the one where he just spun at Danny Roberts for the opening minute and a half, and then the moment he took a step back, Danny Roberts was like, right, I've weathered the storm, time to go on the offensive, and the first step he took forward, Michel Pereira jumped up and kneed him in the skull and put him out. Scary lad, but again, sort of in that Johnny Walker mold where it's like, once you're done doing that, or if I let you do that for a round, how are you going to feel in round two? Yeah, looking down his record, a number of decision losses and a late stoppage in recent history. But it'll be interesting. That would be my advice with Michel Pereira. I'd be like, let him do any shit he wants for the first 2 rounds. Just run or cover up, and then see how he feels. Take him down, see if he can hold out for the 3rd round. I will gamble on trying to finish him in the 3rd round rather than winning the decision. What else? Oh, Todd Duffy back. The Duff Man. The Duff Man is a bizarre character in MMA. In the modern MMA canon, because he absolutely had all the potential in the world. Was he? I think he was another basketball player. It's weird because if you watch a basketball fight, you go, "Fucking hell! Good thing these lads play basketball and don't fight." But once you see him move into different sports, some of these basketball prospects, fucking Thor, Hagnall, whatever his name is, the Mountain, just incredible. But Travis Brown, Todd Duffy, people like that come over from basketball and they make decent heavyweights, and I think they're let down by. Not by their athletic potential, but by decision making and things like that normally. Because what did he do? He came in from Jungle Fight, fought Tim Hague in 2009. His record is really short for what he is, by the way. He's basically a cautionary tale at this point. But he came in, fought Tim Hague, starched him in 7 seconds, so we didn't know anything about him, and then there was a year before he fought again. Fights Mike Russo, and he looked absolutely fantastic in that fight, better than most heavyweights will ever look. He's hitting drop shifts and cheap punches and all sorts of shit that TJ Dillashaw is doing, and then Mike Russo just absorbs all this punishment, catches him coming out, I can't remember what it was with, but catches him at one point just on the chin. Duffy goes down and he hits him with the shortest hammer fist ever, the cat paw of doom they used to call it. But that was the end of Duffy's real career. For whatever reason, he was cut by the UFC. An embarrassing knockout loss hasn't caused guys to get cut from the UFC in the past. So allegedly bad attitude or something like that, wasn't it? But he went to Dynamite and fought Alistair Overeem at his roidy peak. And basically he ran in on Alistair Overeem, and Alistair Overeem held him in his arms like a baby. He Alistair Overeem, it was like they hugged and then he pushed him back to look into his eyes and kneed him, and then turned him around and smashed him with a right hand and knocked him out. Just had nothing for Overeem, which was crazy because people were like, well, that'll be interesting at least. Duffy's a hard hitter and he can, and Overeem was just like, nah, I am 280 pounds of muscle at the moment, thanks, mate. So basically, that was it until 2012, fought in Super Fight League. If you remember them, I said the other day on Twitter, I miss Super Fight League because they used to have like this. They're this Indian organization and they had this theme tune that was like Super Fight League. And then their CEO was like, "We are still a thing. We work in so and so. We're doing an event in Bangladesh or some shit." And I was like, I was actually just being nostalgic. I'm not going to watch your fights now that I know that you're still a thing. But came back at UFC 155 in 2012. Fought Phil DeFree. Phil DeFree fucking... I almost did a Filthy Casual's Guide to him this week because he is one of those stories. He's just, turned it around, really. He's left the UFC. He's gone to... not Cage Warriors. He's gone to KSW. And, he never looked great in the UFC, but he fought Thomas Narkun. Even with a size advantage, it's impressive to beat Thomas Narkun. He looked good on top, but, we're talking about Phil DeFree and we don't need to. Anyway, Duffy starches Phil DeFree. Out for another 2 years, comes back, fights Anthony Hamilton, starches him in the first round. I don't even remember these two happening. That's how weird Duffy's career has been. So then he's out again, comes back in 2015, fights Frank Mir in the main event of some shitty fight night somewhere, and throws a punch from behind him. Every sign that this guy was a superb prospect, all the slick footwork stuff that he was showing against Russo, just gone. He's swinging a punch from behind himself. Some people have screenshotted it, and it's almost impossible for you to do that with your arm. And Frank Mir looks like a slick counterboxer in knocking him out. And then he's just done fuck all since 2015 to 2019, nothing. So you kind of get the right coaches, sort your head out, shut up and let other people tell you what to do. I don't mind if people are... When people say that someone's got a bad attitude in sports, it can mean, particularly in combat sports, it can mean that they want more money. They were accusing Francis Ngannou of having a bad attitude and saying he wanted to use Dana's private jet, but probably just wanted more money. Where were we? Duffy? Yeah. If he's fucking it up because of his coaches and things like that, that'd be one thing. If it's just because of money, whatever. But he does seem to have regressed an awful long way, or did against Mir at least. So he's fighting Jeff Hughes, who's 10-2. I mean, even now Duffy's only 9-2 or 9-3, and it's pretty high up the card. So it's kind of like they're getting back into the Duffy business. Tapology has him at number 121 in the world. I don't think that's representative. I mean, let's ask ourselves: could he beat Geronimo dos Santos? If it's yes, he's top 30. If it's no, he's a bum. They shouldn't rank under 30. They should just be bum. So yeah, that'll be interesting. And then you've got Glover Teixeira versus Nikita Krylov, sorry, I'll say his real name once so that you'll remember. But Nikita Krylov came back from outside the UFC. I was like, uh-oh, has he fucked it up by spending all that time outside the UFC and not, fighting to the level of his opposition? Because he came back and he fought Bland Jackowitz and then got submitted by an arm triangle choke, which I think was from the bottom, which is even weirder. Because he'd been fighting bums like Fabio Maldonado and the ghost of Emmanuel Newton out in Fight Nights Global, FNG. But then he fought Ovin Simprou, who has been a gatekeeper to the top end of the light heavyweight division for quite a while, and finished him by rear naked choke. So, absolute madman Nicky Krills. If he reaches a degree of the potential that we all thought he had, I'll be very impressed. Because he came in with a Kyokushin background, really good kicker, and then his grappling was improving. And if he can actually kick comfortably against dudes, I think he could be a nightmare. I mean, look at John Jones. His whole thing is just being able to kick well because he's comfortable wrestling and he's got good footwork, which I'm not sure Krylov actually has that part of the equation. But anyway, he's fighting Glover Teixeira. Glover Teixeira really only has overhand left hook. He's going to try and overhand across the top of your jab or whatever, or to meet your right hand. And he'll occasionally throw a low kick or a jab, and then he'll grab a single leg, and he does the arm triangle from the top of mount. He's good from the top of mount, actually. But really, counter overhand and single leg are your main worries. I'd say stand back, give him low kicks all night. Just kick his fucking calf until he falls down. He's looked very, very... He's been having to gut out performances recently. There was that one recently where the guy basically elbowed him in the back of the head 8 times. And Glover Teixeira went limp and then woke up and then turned it over and finished it. Who was that? I think that was Carl Roberson. And then he fought Ion Cutelaba, and Cutelaba made him look a fool for the first round and then slowed down. And I don't think there was even a takedown in that one. I think he tried to kick and then fell over himself. And Teixeira jumped on him and finished with rear naked choke. But he's been slipping for a while. And then you've got your main event, Donald Cerrone versus Justin Gaethje. And I'm not even going to go into huge amounts of detail on this one, because I think you know what to expect. It's Donald Cerrone versus pressure fighter. And the way that plays out is not Donald Cerrone's always going to lose, or Donald Cerrone's made improvements. He beat this pressure fighter. The way it plays out is, will Justin Gaethje pressure, or will he walk onto the knee repeatedly? That's all it is. Like, guys who pressure him to the fence and then don't immediately jump in, like, say, Darren Till, Cerrone goes for the knee, misses, gets hit in the face, and then it's just downhill from there. Guys who just try and run in on him over and over again, like Alexander Hernandez, going to get kneed over and over again. That's really all it comes down to. Fascinated to see if Donald Cerrone's jab, the legendary jab, holds up after fighting, against anyone who's not Ally Quinta. But his kickboxing's been looking good lately. I mean, better than even usual since he's been working with Joe Schilling. And Justin Gaethje, his pressure stuff has actually looked a lot smoother. I thought people are going to get super butthurt about the eye poke, which was legit. He legit eye poked Edson Barbosa, but I thought his pressure looked a lot more controlled against James Vick and Edson Barbosa than it did against all his previous fights. Actually, I was going to say UFC fights, but fights. Against James Vick, he backed him onto the fence. He used a jab to back him onto the fence. He threw the low kicks from long range, backed him to the fence, came in with the overhand, went into the clinch, backed out, jabbed him to the fence, came in with the overhand, knocked him out. And then Edson Barbosa, it was all back him up, low kick, back him up, low kick. He did get low kicked a couple of times and looked bad, but he was doing the right things. It was well applied pressure. It wasn't just, I'm here, here's my head, I'm going to put my forearms up, hit me and I'll try and low kick you as you recover from your punches. Excited for that. And I've just written a piece for Unibet today, who next for Khabib. Looking at the winner of this one as a possible contender for after Tony, fucking hopefully, and then possibly after either stupid super fight with GSP or stupid super fight with Kamaru Usman. But then we're getting down the division and we're looking at these guys, and then I was also looking at a couple of guys for the future, like, Makachev. They're probably not going to fight, but Makachev's sort of the future of the lightweight division, and Gregor Gillespie. That'd be an interesting one. But yeah, anyway, that's all I really need to say about that fight. I was going to do some questions today, but I said it was going to be a quick one. If you want to read my post-fight article stuff about like the guard and how I think it's going to play or going to come back into importance in MMA, I wrote an article for the Patreon boys. You can check that out, the Fight Primer. Join the Patreon to help support the podcast and read these articles and things. And if you want to send an email to the podcast at any time, fightsgoneby@gmail.com. I'm your boy Jack Slack. Gaethje bless.